What if you inherited one of the most powerful empires in the world, only to give it all away simply because you were bored of being queen? Now imagine being a teenager, forced onto a throne you never asked for, and then being executed just 9 days later. These aren't plots from a fantasy movie. They are the jaw-dropping true stories of history's most powerful royal heiresses. Today, we are using the power of AI to travel back in time. Empress Matilda, 1102 to 1167. Empress Matilda was meant to be the first ever ruling queen of England. Long before anyone had heard of Queen Elizabeth, her father, King Henry I, had all the important lords in the country swear an oath to make her queen after he died. But you've probably never seen her on a list of English queens, and that's because it never actually happened. When her father passed away, her cousin Stephen raced to London and grabbed the crown for himself. This wasn't just a small family disagreement. It plunged England into a brutal 19-year civil war that historians now call the Anarchy. Matilda was a true fighter, leading armies and making strategic moves to claim what was rightfully hers. I remember reading that at one point, she had to escape a castle by climbing down a rope, dressed in white to blend in with the snow. She never officially wore the crown in England, but in the end, she won. Her son became King Henry II, starting the famous Plantagenet dynasty. Matilda fought her whole life for a crown she was promised, but some are handed a crown they never even wanted. Lady Jane Grey, 1537 to 1554. Imagine being a teenager, more interested in books and learning than in politics, and suddenly being told you are the Queen of England. That was the shocking reality for Lady Jane Grey. She was a brilliant young woman, a great-granddaughter of a king, but she was never supposed to be the main heir. However, powerful men around the dying King Edward VI saw her as a puppet they could control. They pushed aside the king's own sisters, Mary and Elizabeth, and placed the crown on Jane's head. This was like being the main character in a dangerous political thriller you never asked to be in. She was queen for exactly 9 days. The people of England didn't support her. Their loyalty was with the king's true sister, Mary. Jane's support vanished almost overnight, and she was arrested and locked in the Tower of London. At just 17 years old, she was executed. Jane lost her head for a crown she didn't want, a fate that would eerily echo for another famous queen a few decades later, Mary. Queen of Scots, 1542 to 1587. That queen was Mary, Queen of Scots, a woman whose life was a whirlwind of power, romance and tragedy from the moment she was born. She officially became the Queen of Scotland when she was just 6 days old. To keep her safe, she was sent to France as a little girl and grew up in the lavish French court. She was stunningly beautiful and charming, eventually marrying the French prince and becoming the Queen of France as well. For a brief time, she was the queen of 2 nations, making her one of the most powerful women in Europe. But her good fortune didn't last. After her husband died, she returned to a very divided and dangerous Scotland. Her life there was a mess of bad marriages, betrayal and scandal, forcing her to flee to England, seeking protection from her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I. What many people don't realize is that Elizabeth didn't help her. Instead, she saw Mary as a threat and locked her away for 19 years before finally signing her death warrant. Eleanor of Aquitaine, 1202 to 1204. While Mary's story ended in tragedy and the loss of everything she had, another heiress from centuries before managed to become one of the most powerful women in history, not once but twice. Meet Eleanor of Aquitaine. She wasn't just an heiress, she was the single greatest prize in all of Europe. As a young woman, she inherited the massive and wealthy Duchy of Aquitaine, a region in France that was bigger and richer than the lands owned by the French king himself. First, she married the King of France and became Queen of France. But after 15 years and no sons, she did the unthinkable for a woman of her time. She had the marriage cancelled. Then she immediately married the younger, more exciting Duke of Normandy, who soon became King Henry II of England. This made her the Queen of England. Eleanor was no quiet queen. She was a brilliant political player who even went on the Second Crusade. She gave birth to 2 future kings of England, Richard the Lionheart and King John, and ruled the country herself while Richard was away fighting. Boudica to Boudica, the Celtic queen of the Iceni tribe in ancient Britain. When her husband died, he left his kingdom jointly to his daughters and the Roman emperor, hoping this would protect his family. The Romans ignored his wishes completely. Instead, they seized all his land and property, publicly beat Boudica, and attacked her 2 daughters. They believed she was just a helpless woman they could easily push aside. It was a massive mistake, like poking a giant, angry hornet's nest. Boudica was filled with rage and a desire for revenge. She united several British tribes and led a huge army against the most powerful empire in the world. Her forces marched through Roman Britain, burning 3 major cities, including Londinium, the city we now call London, completely to the ground. Roman historians wrote that her army took no prisoners, creating a path of destruction that terrified the Roman Empire. Isabella I of Castile, 1451 to 1504. Isabella of Castile was never supposed to be queen. Her older brother was the heir, but his unexpected death threw the kingdom into chaos. The crown was then supposed to go to her niece, Joanna, but many powerful nobles believed Joanna was not the king's real daughter. Isabella saw her chance and seized it. This started a civil war where she had to fight for the throne that many felt wasn't hers. But Isabella was incredibly smart and determined. She won the war and became Queen of Castile. Then she did something that changed the world forever. She married Ferdinand of Aragon, and together they united their kingdoms to create the country we now know as Spain. She was more than just a queen. She was a commander, a strategist, and a visionary. It was Isabella who famously agreed to fund Christopher Columbus's risky voyage across the ocean. While other rulers said no, she said yes, and her gamble led to the European discovery of the Americas, securing Spain's place as a global superpower for centuries. Margaret Beaufort, 1443 to 1509. Isabella fought a war to win her own crown, but another powerful heiress spent her entire life fighting to put a crown on her son's head. Margaret Beaufort's story is one of the most incredible examples of focus and political maneuvering in history. She was a direct descendant of King Edward III, giving her a claim to the English throne. At just 13 years old, she gave birth to her only child, a son named Henry Tudor. From that moment on, her entire existence was dedicated to one single goal, making him the King of England. She navigated the treacherous politics of the Wars of the Roses, surviving multiple kings and switching allegiances when she needed to. I find it amazing that she secretly organized rebellions and plotted against sitting kings while appearing to be a loyal subject. She was patient, brilliant, and absolutely ruthless in her ambition. Her lifelong quest finally paid off at the Battle of Bosworth Field, where her son defeated King Richard III and became King Henry VII, starting the famous Tudor dynasty. Anne Neville, 1456 to 1485. Margaret Beaufort's victory created a new royal family, but it was built on the ashes of the old one, a family Anne Neville belonged to. Anne was one of the wealthiest heiresses in England, but her inheritance was more of a curse than a blessing. Her father was the powerful Earl of Warwick, known as the Kingmaker, and he used Anne and her sister like pawns in his political games. First, he married her off to the heir of the Lancastrian king. When they were defeated in battle and her first husband was killed, she was left a teenage widow. Then she was married to Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who would later become the infamous King Richard III. Many believe this marriage was to secure her vast fortune. Anne's life was a constant storm of uncertainty and tragedy. She was the daughter of a kingmaker, the wife of a prince, and finally the Queen of England, but she never truly had any power of her own. Her story is a perfect example of how for some heiresses, their wealth and status just made them a target in a man's world. Christina of Sweden, 1626 to 1689, while Anne Neville was trapped by her royal destiny. Queen Christina of Sweden was an heiress who inherited a powerful throne and then did something absolutely nobody expected. She gave it all up. Christina became queen at just 6 years old when her father, the great warrior king Gustavus Adolphus, was killed in battle. She grew up to be a brilliant and unconventional ruler. She was highly intelligent, spoke several languages, and was more interested in philosophy, art, and science than in marriage and producing an heir. The pressures of being a queen in the 17th century were immense. Everyone expected her to marry and continue the royal line, but Christina had no interest in that. So in 1654, at the age of 27, she shocked the entire world by abdicating the throne. She gave up her kingdom, converted to Catholicism, and moved to Rome to live the rest of her life as an independent woman. It's a jaw-dropping moment in history that you rarely hear about. To walk away from absolute power on your own terms was almost unthinkable. Zenobia of Palmyra, circa 240 to after 274 AD, Christina voluntarily gave up her empire. But 2,000 years ago, another queen built one from scratch and dared to challenge the might of Rome itself. Her name was Zenobia, and she ruled the city of Palmyra, a wealthy oasis city in the middle of the Syrian desert. After her husband, the ruler of Palmyra, was assassinated, she took over as regent for their young son. But Zenobia was not content to just be a placeholder. She was ambitious, intelligent, and claimed to be a descendant of Cleopatra. She began to expand her territory, conquering Egypt, Anatolia, and much of the Middle East, carving out a massive chunk of the Roman Empire for herself. For a brief time, the Palmyrene Empire was a reality, with Zenobia as its powerful empress. She minted coins with her own face on them, an act of open defiance to the Roman emperor. Eventually, the Romans struck back, and after a fierce war, Zenobia was defeated and captured. She was paraded through the streets of Rome in golden chains, a symbol of Rome's power, but also a testament to the woman who dared to challenge it. Whether your favorite was the warrior Queen Boudica or the brilliant Isabella of Castile, every single heiress on this list understood the immense power of a royal inheritance. On this channel, the most valuable inheritance you can give is clicking that bright red subscribe button. If you enjoyed seeing these powerful women brought back to life, press that button to join our royal court, and let me know in the comments which historical figure you want to see reimagined next.